Hello and welcome to Pardon the Integration, Securely Manage Your Remote Workforce with Intel, a podcast where we tackle three top trends in the channel today. I'm your host, Ed Hannon, and my guest today is Eric Townsend, Director of SMB Partner and MSP Marketing with Intel. Eric helps organizations through the process of realigning operations to meet emerging business goals to compete at a higher level. Adept at combining classic marketing vehicles with new social and influencing approaches, Eric helps SMEs and MSPs effectively communicate and market services to target key growth audiences, including Gen X and millennials. Thanks so much for being here, Eric, and let's get started by letting everyone know that, again, we're going to talk about securely manage your remote workforce with Intel. And the way our program works is we have three topics we'll discuss throughout the broadcast, and we have 3 minutes to talk about each topic. Our first topic is secure your remote office. Our second topic is support your remote workforce. And our third topic is how Intel vPro can help. And as you watch the program, you'll be able to see the countdown clock on the bottom of your screen. But let's get started right away with our first segment, secure your remote office. And Eric, real simple question for you. How does cybersecurity threats change with an increasingly remote workforce?
Yeah, Ed, it's great. When you think about how our environment is now compared to 6 or 9 months ago, the who, the where, and the how has been the big changes, right? So when I say the who, just think about these remote workers, right? And if now we're going to have hybrid workers, right? And we may have some people that are full, but this whole thing has changed. I think also the part around where, and this isn't necessarily that they're in like an office or they're in a shared workspace, but that they're no longer behind a firewall. And then probably the third thing is that this is the how part that everyone here is like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to help with this, but how do I keep everything secure? The data, their device, all that stuff is really impacting how partners are looking at things today.
And our next question would be, where does that remote workforce, where do they fall short when it comes to hardened cybersecurity technologies?
Yeah, I think, Ed, it comes down to the part of on the who side, right? Let's just think about those remote workers. They don't really understand what issues can impact them, right? They're working and they're used to being behind the firewall, right? So like, hey, I'm here, I'm good, but they don't. And I think with that, the what they're using, the devices, they don't know. Like, okay, hey, I'm just going to grab my consumer PC, or I'm going to grab someone else's device, and maybe it's got Windows 7, maybe whatever. But they don't. They're even focused on, well, as long as it's got my virus protection on there, that Norton thing from way back when, I'm secure, right? And they don't even think about, okay, should I have a hardware-based or hardware-based security? And I think the last part is where we say, and kind of part on the where people are at. There's a couple key stats to point out, but the biggest one I always see is every 14 seconds, and in 2021, it's going to 11 seconds. Every 14 seconds, an SMB in the US has a breach that happens. So wherever they're at, it's not slowing down, it's increasing. So making sure, okay, they don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know the devices they should be using, shouldn't be using. And then also, they don't understand how frequent this is actually happening.
Excellent. And then next question would be, what new security technologies are out there that can help with those cybersecurity threats that remote workforce is dealing with?
And it's interesting, right? When we think about technology, we're sometimes looking at the outside of it, how it looks, right? What's showing up on the screen. And what we look at from an Intel perspective is really the hardened security. It's actually below that OS, or it's actually inside the system itself. So when we think about that, we bring up our Intel vPro platform because it's really provides, I would say, that better remote remediation. So, going out on site, you don't have to, you can do remote, better patch management. But another thing that's been huge lately is because of all the cybersecurity attacks is how do we make sure we're protecting that OS and that BIOS even more? And so we've got something called Intel Hardware Shield that really goes at that.
Fantastic. Let's move to segment 2, support your remote workforce. So first question, what would be, from your vantage point, some of the big security issues that solution providers are dealing with right now when it comes to that remote workforce?
And it's funny, when I was with the partner actually this morning, we were talking about the volume of attacks have not actually gone down. They've actually gone up. So when we think about attacks, we sometimes think it's got to be something local. Someone's doing it in a local area. They can be from other countries, right? Their time of day is different. So I'd say just the protection of all the attacks. I would also say that, an issue that people are dealing with right now, people are not keeping their software up to date. Like they're just not there, since they're not in the office and there's not a way they're being managed. They're just okay. I'll delay that update. I'll delay, and then four releases later, and then it doesn't take, and then they got to send their system in. So I'd say keeping our software updated. And the last one is this part that partners are dealing with a lot of is how am I managing and also onboarding people into company environments. So if they're, businesses are growing, contracting, but when they're bringing people in, they got to get a new IT equipment. But how do I do that if they're not behind the firewall, if they're not coming to our company office?
That's a great point, that last point about bringing in the new employees, because there's definitely hiring going on. So the question is, how do you protect them when you don't have them in the physical building? So to sort of deal with that, what brings me to my next question. What technologies are these solution providers putting in place that can help with some of those security issues?
Most people, when we're looking at as far as trying to protect that device, a lot of times, Ed, we take and say, hey, let's protect the core of our data center. And on the edge, we'll put a couple pieces of software. I think nowadays people are saying, we need to figure out on the edge, what are we putting out there to really wrap the whole thing? So it's not just software. They're saying, what hardware pieces can I put in there? I mentioned about our Intel Hardware Shield map respect. There are times when people are saying, look, this software thing, this software updates, it's a headache. I mean, it was a headache before because people leave their PCs on, couldn't do it up there, right? But now since people are out and they're not working normal hours, Ed, right? I mean, whether people are doing the e-learning thing, so when you put a patch out there, it may not happen, not just that day, could be that week, could be further. So how are you making sure that you're doing that kind of patching happening? That's our AMT technology helping us there. And then also that onboarding piece of new customers, they're outside the firewall environment. That's the key thing people should be thinking about is we're not in the environment where people are sitting behind a firewall. So as a result, all that hardened security that's sitting there that has to go through the data, the software is not there. So that part of being able to help onboard new employees securely is something that they're definitely doing.
Very well said. It's very well said. I want to talk more about some Intel solutions here. So we're going to move to our third segment, which is how Intel vPro can help. First question, how can remote workers secure that home office PC and the network?
I think, Ed, it comes back to that part around how do we put a hardened solution in place, right? So software's great. That's kind of level up here, but how to put that hardened piece, I'd say, and when we think about hardened technology, it's not just, the manage those security things. I'm going to say performance is really big. We got to make sure you got something that can run 10 apps, whatever you want to say, plus all security stuff, plus your VPN, all this stuff has got to be in place, right? And for my people who are shaking, they're going, yeah, the VPN thing's important. Yep. So that's just got to make sure I got performance. I got to make sure though that with the platform that I have that manageability part in there. So enabling where I can actually manage with my existing consoles, right? So the Kaseya's, the ConnectWise, the Spiceworks, the Datos, the SolarWinds. I got to make sure that I am able to go and get that managed. And I think the last thing is making sure that you have the right safeguards in place from a security perspective. Once again, not just at the software level, the OS, but below that at the BIOS level.
Excellent. And let's move to the next question. So many good notes here. Let's move to the next question. Question 2, can you explain how Intel vPro enables the remote workforce?
Yeah, there's lots of great stuff with it. I would tell you I could sit and talk about it. I think the two big ones, when we're thinking about remote people specifically, one, it's that patch saturation. And for most people who don't know, I know that's kind of a technical term. Think of it as like, there used to be these things where Microsoft would put out updates called on Patch Monday, right? Or Patch Thursday, they would do certain days. And that patch, and they would, hopefully everyone's checking, gosh, I hope that's going to go out. So I think the better patch saturation, that's going to make, so ideally we want, 90, 95% or higher, right? Right now, patch saturation numbers are like 60, 70%, right? So that means 30% of the people are not getting patched, right? So the security updates, things like that. And I'd also say that I think you really want to sit back and say, okay, how do I provide better security? Really, and it's out of the edge. So I'm not saying in your data center, but out at the edge, what additional security technologies can I put out there beyond just those software pieces?
So much good stuff. So much good stuff. Last one. How does Intel vPro improve remote workforce security?
Yeah. So I give you the power 3, right? So first one, Intel Hardware Shield. I lead with that one just because that's that edge piece that basically stops those attacks coming in the BIOS, right? Because if we think about the attack at the BIOS stops, the OS doesn't load, BitLocker doesn't load, all that stuff stops, right? So Intel Hardware Shield at the system, I'd say from that remote remediation, and I don't want to miss that. There's still people that when they're working remotely, they got to have people help them. right? There's still social distancing, but so that remote remediation that can actually happen with our Intel active management technology with vPro. And then also, I go back to it, and it's unique right now. It wasn't that big 6 or 9 months ago, is onboarding people securely. So if we have something called Intel Endpoint Management Assistant, where basically it helps partners deploy a system out. And once it's deployed, they can actually connect up and securely connect the network and then give it all its updates from a software perspective. So really making sure at the edge you're covered from not only the hardware perspective, making sure you're in remote remediation, but then also you're making sure that you're onboarding people the right way.
I have so many takeaways that I don't know how I'm going to do this next segment, but we're going to do it together. So I want to thank you all for watching today's program. And I want to let everyone know that that's all the time we have for today. And I thank you, Eric, for being here. Before I go, here are 3 of a list of probably 12 takeaways. So I'm picking 3 here at random. And like, I would go back and watch this program over and over again to get the others. But real quick, when it comes to cybersecurity threats, think of it as the who, the where, and the how that have changed as your remote workforce grows in terms of percentage and numbers of employees. There's no doubt about it. Solution providers are definitely struggling keeping their customers adequately protected as they remote and scatter all over the area, geography, whatever geography we're talking, whether it's community, whether it's the state, whether it's the nation, whether it's the world, depending on the size of your customers. And finally, I'm going to give you 3 examples of how Intel vPro security, Intel vPro improves remote workforce security. Intel Hardware Shield, Intel Active Management Technology with vPro, and also onboard people securely with Intel Endpoint Management Assistance. I think I got all those right. Eric's going to correct me if I didn't, but he's nodding, so I guess we didn't. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks again for watching. I'm Ed Hannon. You've been watching Pardon the Integration. Securely manage your remote workforce with Intel. Thanks so much.